Hello lovies, it's Gina from Gina Louise Designs, and today we're going to have fun making some Valentine crafts, decor, and gifts you could give away to your family. These crafts we're going to do today can be applied to any holiday. You can make them for Easter, Mother's Day, Christmas, any gift giving time, but we're going to stick to hearts today. DIY number one. Let's not forget about our feathered friends out there. So we're going to make a Valentine for our birds. So for this, you need some heart cookie cutters. I was going crazy looking for heart cookie cutters. I assumed that the Dollar Tree would have them. And as I am in Target, I'm walking out and I see all these cookie cutters from Christmas on clearance, and they had tons of hearts. So I only paid 30 cents for them. And I grabbed these little silicone like cupcake molds from the Dollar Tree to see if they will work, and they did. You're going to need some toothpicks, some twine. You will need parchment paper. You're going to need, well, I grabbed these from Hobby Lobby because that was before I found the ones in Target. You're going to need bird seed. Get bird seed. That's for your birds in your area. And please be careful. I just recently found out that bird seed has peanuts and tree nuts in it, which is a very big deal in my house because my daughter is highly allergic. So when I opened the bag and I thought I smelled peanuts, I looked at the ingredients and I couldn't believe it. Anyway, you're going to put down some parchment paper, grab your cookie cutters to set them up, and I'm trying the silicone molds from Dollar Tree, and guess what? They worked just as good. I used 2 envelopes of the Knox gelatin and 2/3 cup of water. Just going to mix that together in a bowl, and after you get the gelatin all dissolved, you're going to add your bird seed. I added 2 cups of bird seed and mixed it all up. I have the recipe at the end of this video. You're going to mix that around really good and get the gelatin all incorporated with the bird seed. It's going to be a little runny, a little watery, but that's fine. It's supposed to be. Now I placed my cookie cutters and my heart-shaped cupcake holders, and I just filled them up with the bird seed mixture, and I patted them down. And then after I filled them up, I just waited until they dried. I took toothpicks and I poked holes in the top of each of them so that I could put my string through them when they dry, so I could hang them from trees for the birds. So just fill these up, make your little holes, and wait until they're fully dry. I waited overnight. Okay, it's the next day. I got this really pretty baker's twine from the Dollar Tree, and I just popped out my birdseed hearts out of the cookie cutters, and I just wiggled the toothpicks around to make the hole a little larger and make sure that I could get my baker's twine through it. Some of them stuck a little bit on the parchment paper, but that was fine. Now I just put the pretty magenta baker's twine through them. And it's simple as that. And you hang them outside on your tree, or if you have birdhouses, buy birdhouses. And it's just so nice to not forget about our feathered friends out there. That's hard for them to find food in the winter. And don't forget to watch until the end so you could see everything staged and finished and hanging outside and all that fun stuff. And now for the final results. DIY number 2. Now we are going to make plantable paper. We're going to make paper hearts that have seeds in them. They're so pretty. You could give them as gifts. You could decorate packages with them. There's so much you could do with them. And all you do is plant them, and in the spring you'll have flowers. For this project, you're going to need a bowl to mix the paper mulch in. And you're going to need scrap paper. I used some pink construction paper because I wanted these to be pretty and kind of Valentine-ish, but you could do this for anything. You could do these for weddings. And I used some unicorn type leftover wrapping paper from my granddaughter's first birthday, and I used some mermaid looking pretty colors. And to answer some questions on can you use wrapping paper, because some people did not know, they thought you can only use regular paper without a shine. This worked fine. I just didn't put a lot of it. I used some paper from my printer, and like I said, you can use leftover paper, junk mail, envelopes, just tear them up into little pieces, tissue paper. And then we're going to, after we fill this bowl up, well, we're not going to fill it up to the top, but after we fill this up, we're going to add water. Now that we have a bowl filled with ripped up paper scraps, we're going to just add water to this, just enough to cover the paper. If you put too much, don't worry, we can still drain it. Now we're just going to put all the ripped up paper that's soaking in the water into a blender, and we're going to blend it up and make paper pulp. Now we have a nice pulp, and what I did after that was I took some of the pieces that didn't make it in yet, and I took some of the pretty ones and I threw it in there without pulverizing it, so that I'd have some pretty texture and colors when I make these. And we're just going to drain the extra water out of this. I drained the extra water out, and this is when you add your seeds. You don't add the seeds in when you put it before you put it in the blender, because the blender will chop up the seeds and then it will harm them and they won't grow. So you wait until after. I like to use forget-me-nots, and I just mix them all in here. I use 2 of these. I always have lots of these on me because whenever I leave things for my customers, I always leave a package of forget-me-not seeds. So we're just going to mix that in, and we're going to put the paper pulp into our cookie molds. Now this is a paper making screen so that the air gets through it and the paper mulch dries. I bought this on Amazon. I'll put the link below, but you don't have to use one of these. You can use a Dollar Tree splatter screen, which is nice and cheap, $1. Very easy. Just lay it on top of a towel like I did. You're going to want to press down on these and get as much water out of them as you can. It helps with speed up the drying process. Okay, now I put as many as I could fit on my screen, and I just set them aside to let them dry overnight. While the hearts were drying, I found these pretty vintage Valentine prints online images, and I printed them out on tissue paper. You just take a piece of tissue paper, tape it to a piece of printer paper, and print them out. I started to cut these out on just the tissue paper, and then later on I realized that if I would just cut through both layers, they cut so much easier. So now my pieces are dry and they're ready to go. I also used these Valentine images on another project you'll see later on in this video. So if you find a bunch of pretty Valentine images that you love, make a bunch of them, print them out. Remember, print them on tissue paper and tape them to a regular piece of printer paper when you put it through your printer. So what I decided to do to give these a little bit, posh them out a little bit, was I got my Mod Podge and I decoupaged the beautiful images onto the plantable seeded hearts. And it just gave them that extra wow factor. I was just cutting out like the roses and some music paper that I printed out, and like the little cherubs, and just to fit them on, and just, decoupage, overlap them, make a collage on it, just make them pretty, 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 pretty. Remember to watch to the end so you could see how I styled these in my home and how I staged everything. These make such beautiful gifts. You could use them for weddings. You could use them for anything. You can decorate them for whatever the holiday is. Doesn't have to be Valentine's Day. Look how beautiful these are. I just love them. DIY number 3. I found this glass heart container at my thrift store, very inexpensive, and I found all these candles at my thrift store, and I thought it'd be fun to melt them down with some Dollar Tree supplies and make some pretty Valentine gifts. So I picked up some scents from the Dollar Tree. They have scents now at mine, and I picked up some of their white candles and some of their wax melts. So at first I put them in a old pot in boiling water, and that took forever. So a faster way is 300 degrees for 15 minutes in your oven, and it works so much better. So I took a mason jar, because you could heat up in mason jars, and I was going to melt down this red candle because I wanted to mix it in with my white and make like a soft pink. And wait till you see the disaster that happened. After I melted down the red candle, I wanted to reuse the wick because it was totally fine and never used. But the little disc on the bottom, the metal disc, came off of it. Or actually, I don't think it had one. So anyway, I took some tea lights I had left over, and I took the little disc that was left from it, and I just hot glued the wick onto the metal piece. Now remember, this is all new to me. It's a big experiment. I've never done this before, so I'm just testing out a few different things. This was difficult to keep it attached, but I ended up using it, and I ended up using another wick because I have a bag of them I got from Amazon. Remember to keep watching for the disaster moment. Now I took a pen and I just wrapped the 2 wicks around the pen. This way when I pour in my hot wax, it doesn't pull the wicks down to the bottom of the candle. I mixed the red and the white together in a mason jar and I created a softer pink. I forgot to videotape the mixing of it, but you can figure that out. Not a big deal. Here we go. Here's my color. And I'm going to pour this melted wax into my heart container. At the last minute, I decided to add 1 more wick because I felt it was a large candle and 3 wicks would be nice. And then this happened. You can only imagine how crabby I was. But I said, oh my God, I better just keep pouring whatever I have left in this jar so I can get this candle made. Yeah, that was not a happy moment for me. It was a mess. I was sitting at my dining room table, even though I had brown paper on it. It went through the brown paper. It rolled off the edge. It went onto my dining room carpet. It was definitely a disaster. And then after all that, the 3rd wick fell out. So I wanted to salvage this Valentine candle so bad. So I took out my pretty pressed flowers that I bought on Amazon. I'll leave a link. These are so beautiful. I make my own, but I didn't have any, and these were just so pretty. So while the candle is still hot but not in liquid form, when it is drying and it's still a little wet to the touch on top, is the best time to place these pretty pressed flowers on top to decorate the candle. What I've discovered is that if the wax gets too hard and the flowers aren't sticking, just take a lighter and run it gently across the top until it gets a little wet, the candle, and it's a little melted, and then your flowers will stick so nicely into it. Remember to stay to the end so you could see all my pretty Valentine decor and projects staged. DIY number 4, which I thought was my favorite until I did DIY number 5. You tell me which one you like better. Anyway, I found these beautiful linen covered, perfect colored books at my thrift store and velvet ribbon at the dollar store. And I also found this package for half off at my thrift store. And it was these beautiful little felt hearts, and there's a cute little sequence like Valentine elephant or something, which I'll just give to my granddaughter. But this is what I did with the books. I purposely looked for books in my thrift store that were in pink, red, cream, and white. And I figured my chances were going to be so slim to find those colors. But I found them and I was so excited. Yeah, my granddaughter's on my lap right now and I'm sure you could hear her. So, you want to talk? So, I wrapped the books in the in the soft pink velvet ribbon. And then I made a beautiful bow on top, decorated it, and I am in love with this book stack. I have this beautiful piece of crochet. So I cut a heart out of it and I just hot glue the heart onto the edge of the book. I have so much crochet. I just love it. I use it in all my designs. I use it in my clothing designs. I use it in my home decor designs. And one of my customers sent me a big box full of them to use for my designs, which was so sweet of her. Anyway, so I just cut out the heart out of the crochet and I'm hot gluing it on. And then I'm going to make a ribbon bow where I just cut strips of ribbon the same size and just gather them in the middle. I'm just making this from a bunch of scrap ribbon that I have, and that bow you see me tying onto it now is from Easter ribbon I had from the Dollar Tree. And together, it just made such a pretty scrappy bow to put on top. I just love the way it came out. And then I ducktail all the ends. Now I'm just adding some of those pretty felt hearts that I got from the thrift store. And it just really, it was just what it needed. I just love this. Now I just fluffed up the bow and added another one of those hearts in the middle of my crocheted heart, and I love this so much. Wait till you see it at the end. It came out gorgeous. DIY number 5. I found this pink cashmere sweater at the thrift store. It had some stains under the arms. It had some pulls. So it wasn't pretty to wear, but I knew I could create something awesome out of it. So I decided to make a sweater wreath. First I cut the sleeves off because I will definitely use them for another project. Maybe I'll make some little stuffed hearts. My granddaughter had her first Christmas and she wouldn't let me take her Christmas tree down. She's only one, and she loves it so much. So I figured I would redecorate it for a Valentine tree since she loves it. Anyway, got rid of the sleeves, and I am just going to cut out the center of this, and I'm going to lay my styrofoam wreath form on it, and I'm going to wrap the cashmere around the ring. I'm just hot gluing it all the way around. And then after I do that, I'm going to cut my way through the center, and I'm going to pull the center pieces around the inner part of the ring and hot glue that as well. I'm so sad to say I have missing footage because I don't know where the footage went for this crochet part one of it. Anyway, I took a piece of a crochet doily that I had in my stash. I laid the cashmere ring into the center of it. I cut the center and I hot glued the pieces to the inner part of the foam ring, just like I did with the cashmere, because I thought this would look so pretty and so shabby chic, since I love that feminine shabby chic look, if I covered the cashmere with some vintage crochet. And that's what I'm doing here. And this came out so lovely. Oh my gosh, I just love it. After I glued all the crochet around the edge there, I took my scissors and I cut all those pieces there in the center that are overlapping, and I gave it some extra hot glue. And now my favorite part, I get to embellish it. I think it looks beautiful already, but I cannot wait to add my pretty little roses and ribbons. I added a dab of hot glue, and then I took my peonies and my roses and the little stem that's in the back of it. I used that to push through the cashmere into the foam. And then I added a little glue to straighten out my flowers, because apparently I cut this one too short in the back and it was starting to fall apart. I have a tutorial coming on how to make those vintage inspired paper rosettes. I made quite a few different ones for my Valentine decorations because I like the very vintage inspired looks. I didn't end up using that vintage cookie cutter that I embellished, but it's also in my tutorial how to do those. I did a bunch of cookie cutters that came out so cute. Now I just ducktailed the ends of my ribbons, and here are the final results. DIY number 6. A few years ago, I was inspired by this TJ Maxx soap that I bought. So I started to make them as gifts for my customers and friends and stocking stuffers. So I would just make pretty little wrappings for my boxes of soap. But then I saw Sherry from Candleberry Cottage, how she created some decorative soap. Remember earlier in the video, I showed you how to make these decoupage prints on tissue paper. and I said I had something in this video later on to do. Well, that's what I want to show you. You could get soap from the Dollar Tree for Valentine's Day, and you can add these Mod Podge, these pretty prints onto the soap. And then what I did was I placed the soap in these pretty plates that I got at the thrift store for 50 cents and made these adorable Valentine gifts. And thank you, Sherry from Candleberry Cottage, for this idea. And if you don't know who she is, which I'm sure you do, she's amazing. I will link her channel down below. That's really all you have to do. You just have to Mod Podge it on and smooth it out nicely. And I put some of these little cherry blossoms in the dish and then tied it up pretty with a bow. And it just makes the cutest, sweetest little Valentine gift. I mean, for anything, Mother's Day, anything, a gift for any holiday. Just a special thank you to somebody. And this actually cost me $1.50. Look how beautiful this is. I even put a little piece of vintage lace underneath that I had. Thank you so much for joining me today and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment telling me which craft you like the best, and please consider subscribing to my channel because it helps my channel grow. This was supposed to be 12 crafts today, but I couldn't get them all up by the end of the day, so I figured I would break it up into 2 parts, so please look out for part 2, which should be up in the next few days. Thank you again. Bye-bye, and see you in the next video.